Long before the rise of Athens, before the glory of Rome, there flourished a civilization so extraordinary that its very existence feels like something out of legend. Picture an island bathed in golden sunlight, where towering palaces stood adorned with vibrant frescoes, where sailors traded across vast seas, and where stories of labyrinthine corridors and mythical beasts were born. This was the world of the Minoans, a people who thrived on the island of Crete over 3,000 years ago, leaving behind mysteries that still baffle us today. Their grandest creation, the Palace of Knossos, is more than just ruins. It's a gateway to a forgotten era, a place where history and myth intertwine so tightly that even now, we struggle to separate fact from fiction. What makes the Minoans so endlessly fascinating? Perhaps it's the sheer audacity of their achievements, an advanced society with flush toilets, intricate art, and sprawling complexes, all at a time when much of Europe was still in the shadows. Or maybe it's the lingering enigmas, the cryptic symbols of their undeciphered script, the abrupt collapse of their civilization, and the haunting legend of the Minotaur's labyrinth beneath the palace. Every corner of Knossos whispers secrets, from the purpose of its winding corridors to the meaning of its vivid murals depicting bull leaping and dolphin processions. These aren't just archaeological puzzles, they're invitations to step into a world that feels both alien and strangely familiar, a mirror reflecting humanity's eternal dance between innovation and mystery. As we peel back the layers of time, we'll uncover 25 of the most compelling mysteries surrounding the Minoans, each one a thread in the tapestry of their lost world. Were they the victims of a cataclysmic volcanic eruption, or did their downfall come from within? Did the labyrinth truly exist, or was it a metaphor for something even more profound? And what can their art, their architecture, and their legends tell us about the way they saw themselves and the forces they revered? This isn't just a journey through ruins, it's a detective story spanning millennia, where every clue leads to new questions. So join me as we wander the halls of Knossos, trace the steps of ancient priests and kings, and piece together the fragments of a civilization that refuses to be forgotten. The answers may surprise you, and the questions will linger long after the video ends. Standing at the heart of Crete, the Palace of Knossos doesn't just defy expectations, it shatters them. Unlike the fortified strongholds of later civilizations, this sprawling complex feels almost alive, its corridors twisting like the tendrils of some ancient vine, its walls adorned with frescoes so vibrant they seem to pulse with color even after millennia. But what was this place really? The debate among archaeologists is as layered as the palace itself. Some argue it was the seat of a powerful king, a political hub where rulers administered their island realm. Others see something far more mystical, a sacred space where priests and priestesses performed rituals beneath the gaze of their deities, where the very architecture seems designed to guide worshippers through ceremonies we can only dimly reconstruct. Then there are the curious details that blur these lines entirely. Take the so-called lustral basins, sunken chambers lined with gypsum, their purpose still hotly debated. Were they purification spaces for religious rites, or simply elegant bathing areas for the elite? The grand throne room, with its alabaster seat flanked by frescoes of griffins, feels regal, yet just beyond lie storage rooms packed with giant clay jars, suggesting Knossos was also a bustling economic center. And why, in a world where rival kingdoms built walls and watchtowers, does Knossos show no signs of defenses? Some whisper that the Minoans were a uniquely peaceful society, their power resting on trade and diplomacy rather than swords. Others propose a darker possibility that their security lay in something we've yet to uncover, perhaps a navy so formidable it made walls unnecessary. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in the palace's very design. Unlike the rigid symmetry of later Greek temples, Knossos seems to embrace fluidity, with rooms that open into courtyards, stairways that lead to unexpected shrines, and corridors that double back on themselves. It's easy to see how these winding passages might have inspired the legend of the labyrinth, but was that the intention? Could the palace itself have been a sort of sacred maze, a physical manifestation of spiritual journeying? The frescoes offer hints, processions of offering bearers, scenes of bull leaping that may depict rites rather than sport, and everywhere the recurring symbols of the double axe and the sacred bull. Knossos refuses to fit neatly into any single category, and that's what makes it so extraordinary. It wasn't just a palace or a temple or a warehouse. It was all these things at once, a microcosm of a civilization that thrived at the crossroads of commerce, faith, and power. To walk its ruins is to glimpse a world where the boundaries between the earthly and the divine were never meant to be clear. Among all the legends tied to ancient Crete, none captivates the imagination quite like the tale of the Minotaur, a monstrous hybrid lurking in the depths of an inescapable labyrinth. This story, passed down through generations, feels like pure myth, yet when you walk the ruins of Knossos, something uncanny happens. The palace's corridors twist and turn unpredictably, rooms open into dead ends, and staircases lead to unexpected levels. It's no wonder early explorers immediately connected this bewildering layout to the legendary maze. But could there be more to the connection than mere architectural resemblance? The myth itself is steeped in symbolism. According to the story, King Minos of Crete demanded tribute from Athens' 7 young men and 7 maidens sent periodically to be devoured by the Minotaur. Theseus, the Athenian hero, volunteers to enter the labyrinth, slays the beast, and escapes using a thread given by Minos' daughter, Ariadne. On the surface, it's a classic hero's journey, but scholars have long suspected deeper meanings. The bull was central to Minoan culture, appearing in frescoes, sculptures, and even ritual games like bull leaping. Some suggest the Minotaur may represent a fusion of human and divine, a symbol of the Minoans' complex relationship with the sacred animal they revered. Others propose the labyrinth wasn't a physical maze at all, but a metaphor for the perilous journey of initiation, perhaps even a rite of passage for young nobles, where confronting the beast was part of their transition into adulthood. Then there's the darker possibility. Could the myth preserve a distorted memory of real sacrifices? While no conclusive evidence proves the Minoans practiced human sacrifice, tantalizing clues linger. A few sites on Crete, like the temple at Enigma, reveal skeletons with markings suggestive of ritual killing, and the legend's emphasis on Athenian youths as offerings raises questions. Was this a later Greek invention to vilify the Minoans, or does it hint at some long-lost tradition? The truth may lie somewhere in between. Myths often weave together fragments of history, symbolism, and cultural anxieties. The Minotaur could embody fears of Crete's once dominant power, while the labyrinth might reflect the awe outsiders felt when encountering Knossos' sprawling, otherworldly design. What makes this mystery so enduring is how it resists simple answers. The palace's layout does feel maze-like, yet calling it a literal labyrinth oversimplifies its purpose. The bull cult was real, but whether it birthed a monster's legend remains speculative. Even the name Minotaur, meaning bull of Minos, ties the creature to the king, hinting at political undertones lost to time. Perhaps the legend isn't just a story, but a palimpsest, layers of meaning inscribed over centuries, waiting to be deciphered. Every retelling, from ancient pottery to modern films, adds another thread to the puzzle, proving that the Minotaur's labyrinth isn't just a place, it's an idea, endlessly twisting, daring us to follow its path. One of the most haunting questions about the Minoans isn't how they lived, but how they vanished. Around 1450 BCE, at the height of their sophistication, this thriving civilization began to crumble. The palaces were abandoned, the artistry faded, and within generations their unique culture was swallowed by the tides of history. What could have brought down a society so advanced, so seemingly untouchable? The answers, like the ruins of Nosos, lie buried beneath layers of time and competing theories. The most dramatic explanation points to nature's fury, the colossal eruption of Thera, the volcanic island now known as Santorini. This wasn't just an explosion, it was a cataclysm. Scientists estimate it was 4 times more powerful than Krakatoa, sending tsunamis crashing into Crete's northern shores and blanketing the island in ash. Yet here's the puzzle: Knossos, the heart of Minoan power, shows no signs of violent destruction from this period. In fact, it continued to be occupied for decades after Thera's eruption. So did the disaster weaken the Minoans, indirectly disrupting trade routes, poisoning crops, or triggering unrest? Or was their downfall caused by something entirely different? Some scholars point to the sudden appearance of Mycenaean influence in Crete around this time. Frescoes and artifacts begin to reflect mainland Greek styles, and linear B tablets, an early form of Greek, replace the Minoans' undeciphered linear script. Was this cultural shift the result of peaceful exchange, or something more sinister? Evidence of burned buildings and weapon hoards at some sites suggests invasion, yet Knossos itself lacks clear signs of violent takeover. Could the Mycenaeans have exploited the Minoans' vulnerability after Thera, seizing control not through conquest but through gradual domination of trade and governance? Then there's the possibility of internal collapse. The Minoans' wealth depended on their maritime network, a web of connections stretching from Egypt to Anatolia. If that web unraveled, whether from climate shifts, piracy, or shifting alliances, their economy could have crumbled like a sandcastle at high tide. Even their reverence for bulls might hold a clue. Some speculate that overprized livestock strained resources, or that a series of failed harvests turned their gods silent. Without written records, we're left reading between the lines of pottery shards and crumbling walls. Perhaps the truth lies in a combination of these forces. A civilization isn't felled by a single blow, but by a cascade of misfortunes, natural disasters eroding stability, outsiders circling like wolves, and internal systems buckling under pressure. The Minoans' disappearance feels so unsettling because it mirrors our own fragility. Their story whispers a warning: no society, no matter how brilliant, is immune to the unpredictable tides of history. And that may be the greatest mystery of all. Among all the artifacts unearthed from ancient Crete, none sparks as much fascination or frustration as the Phaistos Disc. Discovered in 1908 amidst the ruins of the Minoan palace at Faistos, this small clay object, barely 6 inches across, holds a puzzle that has defied solution for over a century. Pressed into its surface are 45 distinct symbols, arranged in a precise spiral on both sides, like some ancient vinyl record waiting to be played. But what do these symbols mean? Are they words, numbers, or something more cryptic? The disc stands alone in Minoan archaeology, with no duplicate ever found, and no other artifact bearing the same script. It's as if someone left us a single page from an entire library, daring us to reconstruct the whole story from just these mysterious markings. Theories about the disc's purpose are as varied as they are imaginative. Some researchers believe it's a religious text, perhaps a hymn to the gods or a set of sacred instructions. Others argue it could be a practical document, like a ledger tracking goods or a calendar marking agricultural cycles. The spiral arrangement has led some to suggest it might even be a board game with symbols guiding players along its coiled path. Then there's the more radical idea: could it be a foreign import? The symbols don't match any known Minoan writing, leading a few scholars to propose it was brought to Crete by travelers from distant lands. But if that's true, why has no similar object ever surfaced elsewhere? What makes the disc especially tantalizing is its craftsmanship. Each symbol wasn't carved or painted, it was stamped into the clay using individual seals, making this one of the earliest examples of movable type in history. This level of precision suggests the disc wasn't a casual creation but something important, perhaps even standardized. Yet without a Rosetta Stone to compare it to, the symbols remain mute. Over the years, countless attempts have been made to decode them, linking the markings to everything from ancient Anatolian languages to early forms of Greek. One particularly creative effort even proposed the disc was a geometric puzzle, its spiral hiding mathematical secrets. But none of these interpretations have gained universal acceptance, leaving the disc's true meaning as elusive as ever. Perhaps the most intriguing question isn't just what the disc says, but why it exists in isolation. If the Minoans used this script regularly, where are the other examples? Was the disc a unique experiment, a prototype that never caught on? Or does its solitary survival hint at some catastrophic event, like the eruption of Thera, that wiped out all other traces of this writing system? The silence is deafening. For now, the Phaistos Disc remains a silent witness to a lost world, its symbols gleaming like unlit stars in the darkness of history. Every glance at its surface feels like standing before a locked door, knowing the key must be nearby, if only we could see it. Walking through the ruins of Nosos, you might overlook one of its most astonishing features until you notice the intricate network of channels running beneath your feet. The Minoans didn't just build grand halls and vivid frescoes, they engineered a water management system so advanced it wouldn't be matched for over 1,000 years. Terracotta pipes precisely fitted and angled to maintain steady flow, snaked through the palace walls. Courtyards drained efficiently after heavy rains, and some rooms even boasted rudimentary flush toilets, with wooden seats perched over clay conduits that whisked waste away. In an era when many cultures still relied on wells and open ditches, the Minoans were orchestrating water with the precision of modern urban planners. How did they achieve this hydraulic mastery centuries before the Romans built their famed aqueducts? The secret might lie in their relationship with the elements. Crete's rugged terrain and seasonal downpours demanded innovation. Flooding could devastate storage rooms filled with precious olive oil and grain. But the Minoans didn't just react to necessity, they turned water into an art form. Their pipes weren't haphazardly laid. Each segment was tapered, designed to fit snugly into the next, preventing leaks and maintaining pressure. Some channels included sedimentation tanks to filter debris, a detail that speaks to an almost scientific understanding of hydraulics. And then there's the quiet marvel of the Queen's Megaron, where a small, private bathroom featured a terracotta tub connected to the palace's drainage system, a luxury that wouldn't become common again until the 19th century. Where did this expertise come from? Some scholars trace echoes of similar systems in ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, suggesting trade contacts might have sparked ideas. Yet the Minoan approach feels distinct. Unlike the monumental, gravity-fed aqueducts of later empires, their designs were compact, adaptable, and woven seamlessly into architecture. This wasn't just engineering, it was a philosophy, a belief that even the most utilitarian systems could harmonize with beauty. The pipes were often hidden beneath vibrant frescoes, as if to say functionality and artistry weren't opposites but partners. The real puzzle isn't just how they built these systems, it's why such knowledge faded. After the Minoan collapse, Crete's later inhabitants seemed to lose this hydraulic wisdom, reverting to simpler methods. Perhaps the answer lies in the very complexity of Nosos. Without a centralized authority to maintain it, the system may have crumbled like the palace itself. Or maybe the Minoans guarded their techniques closely, leaving no manuals for successors. Standing by one of those ancient drains, you can't help but marvel at a civilization that saw water not as a threat to control, but as a force to collaborate with, an ethos as rare then as it is precious today. The bull wasn't just an animal to the Minoans, it was a force of nature, a bridge between earth and the divine, woven into every aspect of their culture. Step into the Palace of Knossos and you're immediately confronted by their obsession. Frescoes of muscular bulls mid-charge, golden figurines of leaping acrobats grasping their horns, even altars shaped like bull horns. This wasn't mere decoration. The sheer scale of bull imagery suggests something far deeper, a reverence so profound it shaped their rituals, their art, and possibly even their identity. But what made this creature so sacred? Take the famous bull-leaping frescoes, where lithe figures somersault over charging bulls in what appears to be a deadly dance. At first glance, it seems like spectacle, but the details hint at something more. The participants aren't warriors or slaves, they're young, often androgynous, their flowing locks and brightly colored loincloths marking them as special. Some scholars argue this was no mere sport, but a rite of passage, a test of courage and agility that transformed adolescents into full members of society. Others see echoes of religious theater where the bull embodied a god and the leapers acted out a myth of conquest and renewal. The danger was real. Misjudge a leap and you'd be gored, but that very risk may have been the point. To face the bull was to confront the raw power of nature itself, and in surviving, to emerge reborn. Then there's the symbolism. Bulls appear not just in art but in sacred spaces. Horn-shaped altars called horns of consecration crown temple rooftops, while shrines feature bull-headed rhytons, vessels used for pouring offerings. Some believe the bull represented the earth's fertility, its strength mirroring the life-giving force of crops and herds. Others propose a celestial connection, the bull's horns echoing the crescent moon, or its charge symbolizing the sun's journey across the sky. The most tantalizing theory links the bull to Poseidon, the earth shaker, who in later Greek myth was said to have sent a white bull from the sea to test King Minos. Could the Minoans have worshipped a bull god long before the Greeks reshaped their pantheon? Yet for all we've pieced together, the heart of the mystery remains. Why did no other contemporary culture elevate the bull to such heights? Egyptian art revered cows as symbols of Hathor, but the Minoans fixated on the bull's untamed masculinity. Mesopotamians sacrificed bulls to their gods, but the Minoans seemed to celebrate communion with the animal itself. Even the legend of the Minotaur, half-man, half-bull, hints at a blurring of boundaries between human and divine, monster and deity. Perhaps the bull was never just one thing. It was a mirror reflecting whatever the Minoans needed it to be, a symbol of power, a vessel for the sacred, a living challenge to humanity's limits. To understand the bull is to glimpse the soul of a civilization that saw the world not as something to conquer, but as a force to meet with awe and dance with, even at the edge of a dagger's point. Walking through the ruins of Knossos, one detail stands out in stark contrast to other ancient sites. There are no towering walls, no fortified gates, no stockpiles of weapons. While contemporaries like the Mycenaeans built massive citadels with cyclopean stones, the Minoans seemed to turn their backs on defense entirely. Even their art tells a curious story. Frescoes brim with dolphins and flowers, but where are the battle scenes, the triumphant kings trampling enemies? This absence has led some to call them the peaceful Minoans, a utopian society thriving without fear, but history rarely offers such simple narratives. Could their apparent pacifism hide a more complex truth? One compelling theory points to geography. Crete's island location made it naturally defensible surrounded by the sea. Any invading force would need overwhelming naval strength to land an army. The Minoans may have invested not in walls but in ships, dominating the Mediterranean with a fleet so formidable it deterred aggression before it began. Ancient Egyptian records speak of the Keftiu, likely Minoan traders arriving with lavish goods, suggesting a network of influence stretching across the known world. Control of the seas could have been their true fortress, making physical defenses unnecessary. Yet if their navy was so powerful, why does no clear evidence of it survive? Unlike later Greek triremes, no Minoan warships have been found, leaving us to wonder if their maritime might was more about commerce than conquest. Then there's the artistic silence. The Minoans depicted bulls leaping, goddesses with serpents, and processions of offering bearers, but no scenes of warfare. Some argue this reflects a society that genuinely disdained violence, perhaps centered around a mother goddess cult emphasizing fertility over conflict. Others counter that art is propaganda. What if the Minoans simply chose not to glorify war, even if they practiced it? The murals at Nosos weren't snapshots of daily life. They were carefully curated symbols of power and ideology. The absence of battle imagery might signal not peace, but a deliberate narrative, like a king today omitting prisons from a national postcard. A darker possibility lingers. Could the evidence of conflict have vanished? Earthquakes, volcanic ash, and later Mycenaean occupation may have erased traces of fortifications or weapon caches. At the site of Galotas, a Minoan palace shows signs of sudden destruction by fire. Was this an attack scrubbed from history? Even the famed, peaceful art might be misleading. The bull-leaping frescoes, for instance, showcase a ritual that could thinly disguise martial training. Young athletes vaulting over charging bulls might have been honing the agility needed for battle. What makes this mystery so gripping is how it challenges our assumptions. We're quick to equate the absence of walls with moral superiority, but the Minoans weren't naive. Their lack of defenses could signal not pacifism, but unmatched confidence, a civilization so secure in its power that it didn't need to carve its strength in stone. Or perhaps they simply defined safety differently, relying on diplomacy, trade, and myth to weave a different kind of shield. In the end, their silence on war speaks louder than any battle cry, leaving us to question whether true power lies in the weapons you forge or the ones you refuse to wield. Among the many puzzles left behind by the Minoans, none taunt scholars quite like the cryptic symbols of Linear A. Unlike its cousin, Linear B, the script later adapted by the Mycenaeans and decoded in the 1950s, Linear A refuses to surrender its secrets. Thousands of clay tablets and inscriptions bear this elegant, undeciphered script, each stroke preserving the voices of a people who shaped the Mediterranean world yet left no dictionary behind. What makes this writing system so stubbornly silent, and what might we learn about the Minoans if we could finally hear it speak? The challenge begins with the script itself. Linear A symbols ranging from simple geometric shapes to stylized animals share some characters with Linear B, but the languages they represent are worlds apart. While Linear B recorded an early form of Greek, Linear A belongs to a tongue that predates it, unrelated to any known language family. Imagine finding a key that fits a lock but opens no door. Recognizing the symbols isn't enough without understanding the words they form. Even the tablet's contents are enigmatic. Some list commodities like grain, oil, and spices, suggesting administrative records. Others feature repeating sequences that could be religious hymns or legal codes, their patterns hinting at meaning just beyond our grasp. Consider the tantalizing clues hidden in these fragments. At the site of Agia Trioda, a tablet inscribed with linear appears alongside a stunning fresco of a harvest festival. Are the markings a tally of offerings or a sacred invocation to bless the crops? Another tablet from Phaistos bears symbols resembling later Greek numerals. Could this be a tax record or a merchant's ledger tracking goods across the sea? Without context, even the most meticulous translations are like assembling a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. The frustration is palpable. These aren't just random scratches, but the bureaucratic heartbeat of a civilization, frozen mid-sentence. Efforts to crack the code have ranged from the scholarly to the fantastical. Some linguists have tried linking linear to ancient Anatolian languages or even Phoenician, while others propose it's a wholly unique tongue, a linguistic island as isolated as Crete itself. One particularly creative theory suggests the script encodes a form of Proto-Etruscan, tying the Minoans to the mysterious predecessors of Rome. But every hypothesis hits the same wall without a bilingual inscription, a Rosetta Stone for the Aegean. Progress stalls. Even artificial intelligence has joined the hunt, analyzing symbol frequencies and patterns. Yet the language's grammar and vocabulary remain ghostly, slipping through the nets of modern technology. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of linear isn't just the loss of information, but the loss of voice. These tablets were never meant for us. They were receipts, inventories, prayers scribbled in haste. Yet in their mundane detail lies the texture of daily life, the weight of a harvest, the cost of a trade, the name of a forgotten official who once walked the halls of Nosos. Every undeciphered line is a conversation cut short, a story interrupted. Until the code is broken, the Minoans remain half in shadow, their words echoing just beyond the edge of hearing. And so the hunt continues, each new fragment a whisper from the past, urging us to listen closer. Among the treasures unearthed from Minoan Crete, few objects capture the imagination like the snake goddess figurines, delicate faience statues of women gripping serpents with an air of quiet power. These enigmatic figures, some barely taller than a hand's breadth, seem to pulse with hidden meaning. Were they depictions of a deity, portraits of priestesses, or something else entirely? The snakes coiled around their arms and crowns refuse to be mere decoration. They hiss with symbolism, inviting us to unravel their secrets. Take a closer look at the most famous of these figurines, now housed in Herakleon's archaeological museum. Her bare breasts and tightly cinched waist suggest fertility, while the snake's one writhing in each upraised hand evoke both protection and peril. In many ancient cultures, serpents symbolized rebirth, their shedding skin a metaphor for renewal. Yet they also slithered through underworld myths, guardians of sacred knowledge. Could this goddess bridge those realms, embodying the cycle of life and death? The way she grasps the snakes without fear hints at mastery, as if she's taming chaos itself. But not all snake goddess figurines fit this mold. Some clutch serpents close to their bodies, almost cradling them, while others wear elaborate headdresses with snakes coiled like living crowns. This variety suggests the statues might represent different aspects of the same deity, or perhaps distinct figures altogether. One theory proposes they're not goddesses at all, but priestesses engaged in rituals, the snakes acting as intermediaries between worshippers and the divine. Imagine a ceremony in Nosos' inner sanctum, where these women channeled the serpent's energy, their movements echoing the creature's sinuous grace. The context of their discovery deepens the intrigue. Most figurines were found in household shrines or palace storerooms, not grand temples. This could mean they played a role in domestic worship, guarding homes against evil or ensuring fertility. Yet their fine craftsmanship, glazed faience requiring skilled artisans, implies official sanction, not folk art. A few were even buried deliberately, as if to consecrate a building or mark a sacred boundary. Then there's the haunting absence of written clues. Unlike Egyptian gods with their hieroglyphic hymns, Minoan deities left no inscriptions to confirm their names or roles. Later Greek myths speak of a Cretan, mother of the serpents, but drawing direct connections risks projecting later beliefs onto an older culture. The snake goddess remains just out of reach, her true significance coiled tight as the creatures she holds waiting, perhaps, for the right hand to gently unravel the mystery. The ruins of Phaistos tell a silent but violent story: blackened walls, collapsed staircases, and layers of ash hinting at a fiery end. Nearby Malia shares the same scars, its once grand palace reduced to rubble in what appears to have been a single, devastating event. These aren't isolated incidents. Across Crete, multiple Minoan centers show signs of abrupt destruction around the same period, roughly 1450 BCE. Nosos alone endured, but even its survival feels like a fragile exception to a mysterious rule. What could have unleashed such widespread devastation? Theories abound, each with its own compelling and contested evidence. Start with the Earth itself. Crete sits on a tectonic knife's edge, and earthquakes were a constant threat. Archaeologists note that some walls at Malia tilt sharply, as if shoved by immense force. Could a series of quakes have shattered the palaces, leaving them vulnerable to fires from overturned oil lamps or collapsed hearths? Yet earthquakes rarely explain the synchronized collapse of distant sites. This leads many to the eruption of Thera, the volcanic island 70 miles north. Thera's explosion was a planetary-scale event, with tsunamis and ash clouds capable of crippling an entire civilization. But here's the puzzle: Nosos, closest to Thera, survived the longest. If the eruption was the killer, why did it spare the mightiest palace while leveling others? Then there's the human factor. Burned palaces often signal invasion, and around this time, the Mycenaeans from mainland Greece were expanding their influence. At Malia, a cache of bronze weapons was found buried hastily beneath a floor, someone's failed attempt to hide valuables from attackers. Yet the Mycenaeans weren't mindless destroyers. They revered Minoan culture, later adopting their art styles and even their administrative practices. Would they really torch the very cities they sought to control? Unless, of course, the burning came from within. Some scholars point to fresco fragments at Faistos showing bound captives, hinting at possible uprisings. Could a revolt by Crete's lower classes or rival elites have toppled the old order? The most haunting possibility is that no single culprit exists. Palaces might have fallen to different fates: Faistos to rebellion, Malia to quakes, other sites to Thera's aftermath. Nosos, with its robust trade networks and central authority, could have weathered storms that shattered weaker neighbors. This wouldn't be a tidy collapse, but a slow unraveling where disasters compounded like dominoes. The real mystery isn't just what happened, but how the Minoans perceived it. Imagine standing in the smoldering ruins of Malia, watching the smoke rise, and wondering if the gods themselves had turned against you. In the end, the silence of the ruins speaks loudest. A civilization doesn't need to vanish all at once to be lost. Sometimes, it's the echoes of many small apocalypses that fade the slowest. The walls of Knossos seem to ripple with life, not just any life, but the darting, swirling energy of the sea itself. Dolphins leap across frescoes in arcs of cobalt and gold. Octopuses stretch their tentacles over pottery with almost playful confidence, and fish school in rhythmic patterns as if frozen mid-swim. This isn't mere decoration, it's an obsession. No other ancient culture depicted marine life with such frequency or vitality. So why did the Minoans, whose island home was cradled by the Mediterranean, fill their world with these aquatic motifs? The answer might lie in something deeper than aesthetics, a relationship with the sea that shaped their identity, their economy, and possibly even their spirituality. Consider the practical side first. Crete's geography made the sea unavoidable. Surrounded by water, the Minoans became master navigators, their ships threading trade routes from Egypt to Anatolia. The famous flotilla Fresco from Akrotiri on Santorini, though not on Crete itself, shows a vivid procession of Minoan-style vessels, their sails billowing, hinting at a maritime culture so advanced it influenced neighboring islands. Marine imagery on storage jars and seals might have marked goods traded across these watery highways, branding Cretan olive oil or wine with symbols of their seafaring prowess. But the art goes beyond commerce. The dolphins at Nosos don't just adorn warehouses, they grace sacred spaces, suggesting the sea wasn't just a resource, it was revered. Then there's the spiritual angle. Unlike later Greeks who saw the sea as the domain of Poseidon, a capricious god to be appeased, the Minoans' marine art feels celebratory. The famous dolphin fresco in the Queen's Megaron shows no hint of danger, just creatures frozen in harmony, their bodies curving like waves. Some scholars propose these images reflect a belief in the sea as a liminal space, a bridge between the human world and the divine. Octopuses, with their otherworldly intelligence and ability to vanish into the depths, might have symbolized transformation or hidden knowledge. Even the shells found in shrines, like the Triton shells used as ritual trumpets, suggest the ocean's voice was part of their sacred soundscape. But here's the twist: Crete wasn't just an island of fishermen and traders. The sheer scale of marine art implies a cultural identity tied to the sea at a symbolic level. The term thalassocracy was coined by Thucydides to describe later Athenian dominance, but could it apply to the Minoans? No records confirm an empire, yet their influence stretched across the Aegean like ripples from a stone. Perhaps the dolphins and octopuses weren't just decorations or deities, but emblems of a collective psyche, a people who saw themselves as inseparable from the currents that connected them to the wider world. The mystery lingers because the sea, like the Minoans themselves, refuses to be pinned down. Their art captures not just the creatures of the deep, but the sea's dual nature, giver of life and gateway to the unknown. Every dolphin fresco is a whisper of voyages taken, every octopus jar a testament to a culture that navigated not just water, but the mysteries of existence. To understand these motifs is to dive into a world where the boundary between the earthly and the eternal was as fluid as the tides. Among the vibrant frescoes and artifacts of ancient Crete, one detail stands out with striking consistency. Women aren't just present in Minoan art, they dominate it. Unlike in neighboring civilizations where women were often relegated to domestic scenes or depicted as passive ornaments, Minoan women appear as central figures in rituals, processions, and even what seems like athletic events. Take the famous grandstand fresco from Nosos, where women sit prominently in tiered seating, their elaborate gowns and animated gestures suggesting they held places of honor during public ceremonies. Or consider the ubiquitous female figurines holding snakes or standing atop mountain peaks were these goddesses, or mortal women embodying divine authority. The evidence paints a picture of a society where gender roles may have been startlingly different from what we expect of the ancient world. But what exactly were these women doing? Some scenes show them in what appear to be leadership roles, offering libations, presiding over gatherings, or even wielding ceremonial axes. The Sacred Grove and Dance fresco depicts women leading a ritual dance, their arms raised in gestures that echo later Greek depictions of priestesses. Then there's the controversial bull leaping imagery. While most assume the acrobats were male, a few fragments show figures with pale skin, a color convention Minoan artists used for women, mid-leap over a charging bull. Could women have participated in this deadly sport, or is the paint playing tricks on us? The ambiguity only deepens the mystery. The religious angle is equally fascinating. Many of the most powerful Minoan deities appear to have been female. The so-called Mother of the Mountain figurine, found in a peak sanctuary, shows a woman standing triumphantly atop a rocky outcrop, flanked by lions. Later Greek myths speak of Re, the mother of Zeus, hiding her son in a Cretan cave. Could this be a distant memory of an earlier mother goddess cult? The sheer number of female-centric religious artifacts, from snake-wielding figurines to seal rings, showing women receiving offerings, hints at a spiritual hierarchy where women served as intermediaries between the human and divine realms. Yet for all this prominence, questions remain. Does art reflect reality or an idealized vision of society? The absence of clear written records leaves us guessing whether women held political power or were confined to religious roles. Some scholars point to later Greek accounts of legendary Cretan queens like Ariadne, suggesting kernels of truth in the myths. Others argue that the Minoans' apparent egalitarianism might be overstated. After all, most of the art comes from elite contexts. Could the priestess queens be exceptions rather than the rule? What's undeniable is how radically the Minoans disrupt our assumptions. In a world where most ancient cultures sidelined women, Crete's frescoes and shrines shout a different story, one where women stood at the heart of public life, their authority woven into the fabric of daily ritual and celebration. Whether this reflects true equality or a unique religious privilege, the message is clear. When it comes to gender, the Minoans played by their own rules, leaving us to piece together a social structure as fluid and enigmatic as the sea that shaped their island home. Among the treasures of Minoan Crete, few objects spark as much curiosity as the harvester's vase, a palm-sized masterpiece carved from dark steatite, its surface alive with a rhythmic procession of figures. At first glance, it seems to capture a moment of pure celebration. Men stride in unison, their muscular arms raised, mouths open as if singing, while one figure carries what appears to be a sistrum, a musical instrument linked to rituals. But look closer and the details grow enigmatic. Their faces are individualized, some bearded, others clean-shaven, suggesting specific people rather than generic symbols. One man even clutches a long, crooked staff, his posture weary compared to the others. Is this a simple harvest festival, or a scene steeped in something far more complex? The craftsmanship alone speaks volumes. Every fold of their loincloths, every curl of their hair is rendered with precision, the kind of labor reserved for objects of profound importance. This wasn't utilitarian pottery. It was a vessel meant to be seen, touched, perhaps even passed hand to hand during ceremonies. But what did it hold? Some propose it contained sacred oils or grain offerings, linking it to agricultural rites. Others point to the figure's animated expressions, arguing the vase might depict a funeral lament or a hero's welcome. The sistrum's presence hints at Egyptian influence, raising questions about cultural exchange across the Mediterranean. Then there's the mystery of the missing pieces. The vase was found fractured, its upper section lost to time. Were there once more figures, perhaps a goddess leading the procession, or a bull symbolizing divine blessing? The gap feels like a cliffhanger, a story interrupted mid-sentence. Even the term harvester's vase might be a misnomer. Without crops or tools clearly depicted, the scene could as easily show warriors returning from battle or initiates in a mystery cult. The staff carrier's slumped shoulders might signal exhaustion from labor or the weight of a spiritual ordeal. What makes this artifact so compelling is how it resists easy categorization. Unlike the grandiose frescoes of Knossos, the harvester's vase feels intimate, a snapshot of collective emotion frozen in stone. Whether it's joy, grief, or reverence depends on the angle you view it from. And that's the heart of the mystery. In a civilization that left no deciphered literature, objects like this become our only whispers of their inner world. Every figure's tilt, every open mouth is a syllable in a language we're still learning to hear. High above the bustling palaces and coastal towns of ancient Crete, the Minoans sought the divine in the most unexpected places, wind-swept mountain peaks where earth and sky seemed to touch. These remote sanctuaries, perched on ridges and summits across the island, weren't just scenic overlooks. They were sacred spaces, littered with clay figurines, animal bones, and ceremonial vessels, all whispering of rituals performed under open skies. What drew these sophisticated urbanites to such rugged heights? Was it the thrill of standing closer to their gods, or something far more practical, like tracking the movements of celestial bodies across the vast Cretan horizon? The artifacts tell part of the story. At the sanctuary of Pacifism, excavators found thousands of tiny clay limbs, arms, legs, even torsos left as offerings, likely pleading for healing or strength. Nearby, at the peak of Juctas, miniature bulls and double axes lay nestled in the rocks, symbols of power and sacrifice. But the most striking discoveries are the so-called horns of consecration, stone altars shaped like bull horns, echoing those found in the palaces below. This wasn't casual worship, it was a deliberate mirroring of earthly and celestial realms. Some scholars argue these peaks served as spiritual amplifiers, places where prayers could rise unfiltered to the heavens. Others point to their strategic alignment with solstices and equinoxes, suggesting the Minoans used them as primitive observatories, marking time by the sun's dance across the mountains. Then there's the question of who made these pilgrimages. Unlike the grand processions at Knossos, peak sanctuaries show no signs of permanent priests or elaborate temples. The votives are often crude, hastily shaped by untrained hands, perhaps offerings from farmers, shepherds, or even children. Could these have been spaces of personal devotion, where ordinary people communed directly with the divine, free from the control of palace elites? The sheer variety of figurines, pregnant women, warriors, animals hints at a faith as diverse as the worshippers themselves. Yet the sanctuary's locations raise another possibility. Many sit along natural travel routes visible for miles. Were they waypoints for traders who stopped to leave offerings for safe passage, or territorial markers asserting Minoan presence across the island? The sanctuary at Kaphinas, for instance, overlooks the Libyan Sea, its vantage point perfect for spotting ships or signaling with fires. Ritual and practicality might have intertwined here, blending the sacred with the strategic. What makes these sites so haunting is their silence. Unlike Egyptian temples or Mesopotamian ziggurats, peak sanctuaries left no inscriptions, no hymns to name the gods worshipped there. The wind has long since scattered the prayers once whispered on these heights. All that remains are the fragments, a clay foot, a broken horn, a stain of ash, each a fragile bridge to a world where mountains weren't just part of the landscape, but portals to something beyond. To stand there today is to feel the echo of a belief system that saw no divide between the sacred and the summit, where every climb was a kind of communion. The bull-leaping fresco isn't just art, It's a frozen moment of danger and grace, a snapshot of young bodies suspended mid-air over a charging bull's horns. The scene is so vivid it feels alive, the bull's muscles taut, the acrobat's limbs outstretched as if defying gravity itself. But what were these leapers truly doing? Were they athletes performing for a cheering crowd, or initiates in a sacred trial where one misstep could mean death? The answer might lie somewhere between sport and sacrament, a blend of spectacle and spirituality that only the Minoans could have conjured. Look closely at the fresco's details. The bull, rendered in ochre and crimson, isn't just any animal, it's colossal, its power exaggerated, its horns curved like crescent moons. The leapers, clad in nothing but loincloths, are neither armored warriors nor reluctant sacrifices. Their bodies are lean, their movements precise, as if trained for this very moment. One grips the bull's horns, preparing to somersault over its back, while another stands poised to catch the vaulter mid-flight. The third, arms outstretched, seems to land gracefully behind the beast. This isn't chaos, it's choreography. The precision suggests years of practice, a tradition passed down through generations. But why risk life and limb for such a performance? Some scholars see bull leaping as the ultimate rite of passage. In many ancient cultures, confronting a wild animal marked the transition from youth to adulthood, a test of courage and skill. The Minoans, with their deep reverence for bulls, might have viewed the act as a symbolic taming of nature's fury. Surviving the leap could have been a public declaration of maturity, a way to earn status in a society that prized agility and bravery. Fresco fragments from other sites show women painted in the customary white pigment participating alongside men, hinting that this wasn't just a male-dominated ritual. If true, it paints a startling picture of gender roles, where young women and men alike proved their worth through equal daring. Yet there's another layer. The bull wasn't just a physical challenge, it was a sacred symbol linked to deities and the cosmos. Later Greek myths told of Zeus transforming into a bull to carry Europa to Crete, and the Minotaur's legend tied the beast to the labyrinth's heart. Could the leaping ritual have reenacted a myth, the acrobats embodying heroes or gods? The fresco's placement in Nosos' palace adds weight to this idea. It wasn't hidden in some private chamber but displayed prominently, perhaps as a reminder of the kingdom's divine favor. Then again, maybe we're overcomplicating it. Could bull leaping have been pure spectacle, the Minoan equivalent of a public game? The absence of protective gear or weapons suggests a focus on agility over combat, more circus than gladiator pit. Ancient texts from neighboring cultures describe acrobatic feats as entertainment, and the fresco's lively energy fits that vibe. Yet even if it began as sport, the Minoans' spiritual connection to bulls likely infused it with deeper meaning over time. What's undeniable is the fresco's enduring power. Unlike static statues or solemn religious scenes, this artwork thrums with motion and risk. It captures a culture that didn't just worship forces of nature, it danced with them. Every leap was a pact between human and beast, a fleeting balance of control and surrender. And that's the real mystery, not whether it was sport or ritual, but how the Minoans blurred the two so effortlessly, leaving us to wonder where the performance ended and the prayer began. Deep in the heart of Nosos lies a chamber that has sparked fierce debate for over a century, the so-called throne room. At first glance, it seems straightforward. A stone seat carved from gypsum, flanked by frescoes of majestic griffins, their wings outstretched as if guarding the space. Archaeologist Arthur Evans, who excavated Knossos in the early 20th century, took one look at that seat and declared it Europe's oldest throne, envisioning a king holding court here. But what if Evans got it wrong? The more you examine this room, the less it feels like a seat of political power. and the more it resembles something far more mystical. Start with the room's proportions. At barely 12 feet across, it's surprisingly intimate, hardly the grand hall you'd expect for a monarch ruling a maritime empire. The throne itself is low and narrow, more like a priest's stool than a regal chair. Then there's the basin carved into the floor just in front of it, its purpose unclear. Was this a libation vessel for offerings, or simply a footbath for weary royalty? The griffins, mythical creatures with the body of a lion and the head of an eagle, add another layer of intrigue. In later Greek myth, griffins guarded the gold of the gods. Their presence here suggests this space might have been less about earthly authority and more about communion with the divine. The room's location deep within the palace complex raises further questions. Unlike later Bronze Age thrones, which were positioned to impress visitors, this one sits tucked away, accessible only through a series of anterooms. Its walls bear traces of repainting over the centuries, hinting at prolonged ceremonial use rather than a single ruler's vanity project. Even the lustral basin nearby, a sunken chamber thought to be for purification rituals, points to a sacred function. Could this have been a space where priestesses channeled deities, their words echoing off the griffin-adorned walls? Not everyone dismisses the throne theory. Some argue that Minoan kingship might have been deeply intertwined with religion, blending political and spiritual roles. The griffins could symbolize the ruler's divine mandate, much like lions flanked thrones in ancient Egypt. The basin might have held holy water for ceremonial hand-washing before audiences. Even the room's small size could reflect an elite, secretive style of governance decisions made not in sprawling courts, but in hushed consultations with the gods. What makes this mystery so compelling is how it mirrors larger debates about Minoan society. Were they ruled by warrior kings like their Mycenaean neighbors, or by a theocracy where priestesses held sway? The absence of fortifications and battle scenes in their art suggests power derived from something other than brute force, perhaps control of religious knowledge or trade networks. The throne room, whether secular or sacred, becomes a microcosm of this enigma, a space that refuses to fit neatly into our categories, just as the Minoans refuse to conform to our expectations of ancient power. To sit in that gypsum seat today is to feel the weight of unanswered questions pressing down, not just about who might have ruled from here, but how they made the very air around them feel charged with authority. Among the vibrant frescoes and sacred figurines of Minoan Crete, one absence echoes louder than any presence: the near-invisibility of male deities. While powerful goddesses dominate the art, from the serpent-wielding priestesses to the enigmatic Mother of the Mountain, male divinities linger in the shadows, reduced to supporting roles or vague nature spirits. This striking imbalance upends everything we know about ancient religions, where pantheons typically revolved around thunder-wielding sky gods like Zeus or storm-bringing Baal. So why did the Minoans chart such a different course? The answer might lie not in modern notions of matriarchy, but in a worldview where divinity itself flowed through different channels. Consider the evidence. The most iconic religious figures, the snake goddess, the bare-breasted women clutching poppies or lilies, the commanding figure atop the mountain flanked by lions, are overwhelmingly female. Even in scenes of worship, women take center stage, offering libations or presiding over ceremonies. Male figures, when they appear, are often diminutive, a youthful god descending from the sky on a seal stone, a bearded man possibly symbolizing a river spirit. Only the master of animals, a rare motif showing a man gripping creatures by their necks, hints at male divine power, but even this figure pales next to the goddess's omnipresence. Does this mean the Minoans worshipped a supreme mother goddess, as early archaeologists like Sir Arthur Evans claimed? the truth is likely more nuanced. Later Greek myths speak of Re, a mother goddess associated with Crete, but projecting these tales backward risks distortion. A closer look reveals subtle male divine threads, like the Cretan Zeus, said to have been born and buried on the island, or the mysterious Velchanos, a possible youthful god linked to vegetation. Their scarcity in art might reflect not absence, but a cultural preference for representing the sacred through feminine forms. After all, in a society where women played prominent ritual roles, it's natural that deities would mirror that visibility. Then there's the practical angle. Many surviving Minoan artifacts come from household shrines, where appeals for fertility and protection dominated. Female figurines holding infants or snakes would resonate more powerfully in domestic contexts than warlike gods. Even the famous horns of consecration symbol might represent not bulls, but the crescent moon, a celestial body long tied to feminine divinity. The Mycenaeans, who later absorbed Minoan culture, tellingly reversed this trend, elevating Poseidon and other male gods. This shift suggests the Minoan spiritual landscape was truly exceptional. Perhaps the real mystery isn't the lack of male gods, but our own expectations. We're conditioned to see ancient religions through the lens of Zeus or Odin, where male deities wield lightning and dictate fate. The Minoans might have envisioned a cosmos where creation and renewal, not conquest and storms, defined the sacred. Their goddesses weren't just fertility symbols, they were custodians of life's cyclical nature, from the serpent's rebirth to the mountain's enduring strength. In a world where the sea could nourish or destroy in equal measure, that perspective makes profound sense. The silence of their male gods, then, isn't an omission, it's an invitation to rethink how power and the divine can wear countless faces. The Mediterranean of the Bronze Age was a vast, interconnected web of trade routes, and at its center, like a spider spinning silk, sat the Minoans. Their pottery, seals, and luxury goods have turned up everywhere from the Nile Delta to the shores of Sicily, even as far west as Spain. This wasn't random barter, it was a commercial empire built on something far more valuable than gold: trust. Unlike later civilizations that conquered markets by force, the Minoans seem to have mastered the art of exchange through something subtler: cultural charisma. Their distinctive art styles were imitated from Cyprus to the Cyclades, their architectural flourishes copied in distant ports. But how did an island civilization, barely 100 miles long, become the economic heartbeat of an entire sea? Shipwrecks off the coast of Turkey offer tantalizing clues. The Uluburan wreck, dating to the 14th century BCE, carried a cargo straight out of a Minoan trader's wildest dreams: copper ingots from Cyprus, ebony from Nubia, glass from Mesopotamia, and most tellingly, Cretan-style pottery. The mix suggests a network so sophisticated that Minoan merchants weren't just moving goods. They were orchestrating a system where raw materials flowed to specialized workshops and finished products back to elites across the region. Their secret might have been adaptability. While Egyptian traders stuck to rigid royal monopolies and Mycenaeans later relied on military outposts, the Minoans appear to have operated like a Bronze Age Venetian republic: flexible, decentralized, and laser-focused on profit. A single Minoan seal found in Egypt's Hyksos capital shows a ship unloading timber, while frescoes at Tel el-Dabba depict Minoan-style bull leaping. This wasn't just trade, it was cultural ambassadorship, yet the absence of fortifications around Cretan ports raises an intriguing question: how did they protect their wealth? The answer might lie in their ships. Though no Minoan vessels survive, frescoes and seal stones show sleek, oared galleys with high prows perfect for speed and cargo, but also defense. Unlike the later Greek pentaconters, these ships lacked dedicated fighting decks, implying their security came from reputation rather than ramming prow. The Minoans may have cultivated a neutrality so valuable that pirates and kings alike saw their safe passage as being in everyone's interest. A clay tablet from Mari in Syria mentions Kaptaru, likely Cretan textiles arriving alongside lapis lazuli, hinting at treaties or even diplomatic immunity for merchants. But was this network purely peaceful? The distribution of Minoan goods maps suspiciously well to areas later controlled by the Mycenaean Sardinia, southern Italy, the Aegean Islands. Some scholars argue the Minoans didn't just trade, they gatekept. Control over key materials like tin, essential for bronze, would have given them outsized influence. The fact that linear accounting tablets focus heavily on wool, olive oil, and perfumes suggests state-sponsored monopolies on luxury goods. And let's not forget the raw intimidation factor. A fresco from Akrotiri shows a flotilla of Minoan ships, their sails billowing in unison, less a merchant convoy than a show of force. What truly set the Minoans apart, though, was their ability to turn commerce into culture. A pottery fragment found in Egypt bears the image of a Minoan-style octopus, but made from local clay, proof that foreign artisans were copying Cretan designs to meet demand. Their brand became so powerful that even after their collapse, Mycenaean traders slapped Minoan motifs on their wares to boost sales. In the end, their greatest legacy might not be the goods they moved, but the idea they embodied. That wealth could flow not from the edge of a sword, but from the prow of a well-stocked ship and the savvy to make the whole Mediterranean want what they had. The dolphin fresco from Nosos isn't just art. It's a burst of motion frozen in time, a whirl of cobalt and gold where sleek marine creatures arc through what seems like an endless cerulean sea. At first glance, it radiates pure joy, an ancient celebration of nature's beauty, but look closer and the questions begin. Why place this exuberant scene in the heart of the palace, near spaces thought to be sacred? Why do dolphins appear so frequently in Minoan art, not just as decorations but as central figures in rituals? The answer might lie somewhere between the playful and the profound, a blend of cultural identity and cosmic belief. Take the fresco's composition. The dolphins don't just swim, they spiral, their bodies forming a dynamic rhythm that feels almost musical. This isn't random. It mirrors patterns found in Minoan pottery and seal stones, where marine life often moves in harmonious, repeating sequences. Some scholars argue this reflects an obsession with cycles, tides, seasons, the migratory paths of sea creatures, all vital to an island society dependent on the Mediterranean's rhythms. The dolphins, then, could be more than animals. They might symbolize the sea's eternal ebb and flow, a divine force the Minoans sought to honor. Then there's the fresco's location in the so-called Queen's Megaron, a space once thought to be royal quarters but now suspected of having religious significance. Nearby, archaeologists found altars and vessels used for libations, hinting at ceremonies tied to water or fertility. In later Greek myth, dolphins were linked to Apollo and Dionysus, guides between worlds. Could the Minoans have seen them similarly, messengers from the depths, bridging the human and divine? The absence of written records leaves us guessing, but the fresco's placement suggests it wasn't just decor. It might have been a visual hymn, a way to invoke the sea's blessings within the palace walls, yet the dolphin's energy resists solemn interpretation. Unlike the rigid formality of Egyptian or Mesopotamian religious art, these creatures pulse with life, their curves exuding spontaneity. This lightness raises another possibility, that the Minoans simply loved dolphins for their own sake. Ancient mariners often spoke of dolphins escorting ships to safety, and their intelligence and sociability would have fascinated observers. Fresco fragments from Akrotiri show dolphins swimming alongside fishermen, suggesting a bond beyond symbolism. Perhaps the art captures a genuine affinity, a recognition of kinship with creatures who, like the Minoans, thrived in the sea's embrace. The mystery deepens when you consider what's missing. Unlike bull imagery, which ties clearly to rituals, dolphin art lacks obvious ceremonial context. No dolphin-shaped rhytons or altars have been found, and they rarely appear in votive offerings. This absence makes their prominence in frescoes even more intriguing. Were they emblems of a maritime identity, like a national flag woven into palace walls? Or did their meaning shift over time, fading from sacred to secular as Minoan culture evolved? What's undeniable is how the dolphins defy simple categorization. They're too lively to be mere religious icons, too deliberate to be casual doodles. In their fluid forms, we glimpse a civilization that saw no divide between reverence and delight, between the practical and the poetic. To the Minoans, the sea wasn't just a resource, it was a living tapestry, and the dolphins, its most dazzling threads. Whether as divine symbols or beloved neighbors, they swam through Minoan consciousness, leaving ripples we're still trying to trace. Timekeeping in ancient Crete presents one of the most subtle yet profound puzzles of Minoan civilization. While the Egyptians etched star charts into temple ceilings and the Babylonians tracked planetary movements with mathematical precision, the Minoans left behind no obvious calendars, no stone circles aligned to solstices, no tablets tallying lunar months. Yet their sophisticated society clearly depended on precise temporal organization. Harvests needed coordination, religious festivals demanded exact timing, and maritime trade required seasonal planning. So how did they mark the passage of days, seasons, and years? The clues lie scattered like fragments of a broken sundial, waiting to be pieced together. Some scholars turn to the architecture itself for answers. The orientation of certain rooms at Nosos aligns with sunrise during equinoxes, suggesting the palace may have functioned as a crude solar observatory. A peculiar feature in the palace's central court, a raised stone platform with shallow depressions, has been proposed as a kind of calendrical device where shadow lengths could signal seasonal changes. Even the famous horns of consecration might have served a dual purpose. Their distinctive shape could have cast shadows marking solstices when viewed from specific vantage points. These architectural hints imply a calendar deeply tied to solar cycles, where the movement of light across sacred spaces dictated the rhythm of rituals. But the agricultural evidence complicates this theory. Storage jars at Nosos bear symbols resembling grain stalks and fruit clusters, possibly indicating harvest periods. The Minoans' reliance on olives, grapes, and barley would have demanded intimate knowledge of growing seasons, yet no surviving records show how they tracked them. Could their calendar have been phenological, based on natural events like the flowering of crocuses or the arrival of migratory birds? This method, used by many pre-literate societies, would explain the absence of written records while accounting for regional variations across Crete's microclimates. Then there's the celestial angle. A handful of Minoan seal stones depict star clusters that some researchers identify as constellations. One particularly intriguing seal from Mallia shows a figure holding what appears to be a crescent moon beside a distinctive grouping of 7 dots, possibly representing the Pleiades. In later Greek tradition, the Pleiades' heliacal rising marked the start of the sailing season. Did the Minoans use similar celestial markers? The lack of surviving astronomical instruments makes this speculative, but the prominence of celestial imagery in their art suggests the night sky held more than aesthetic value. The most tantalizing hints come from unexpected places. A ceramic fragment from Faistos bears a painted spiral with 12 distinct coils, each containing symbols that could represent months. The famous harvester's vase shows men carrying what might be sheaves of grain in procession. Could this depict an annual harvest festival tied to a specific calendar date? Even the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur contains a temporal clue. The Athenian tribute was said to occur every 9 years, hinting at a long cycle calendar used for major rituals. What emerges is a portrait of a timekeeping system as fluid and multifaceted as the Minoans themselves. Unlike the rigid solar calendar of Egypt or the meticulous lunar records of Mesopotamia, their approach may have blended methods: solar alignments for grand ceremonies, agricultural signs for planting, celestial events for navigation. This absence of standardization speaks not to primitiveness but to adaptability. In a world where the sea could shift from ally to adversary in a season, where earthquakes could alter landscapes overnight, flexibility may have been the greatest wisdom of all. The true Minoan calendar might not have been carved in stone or clay, but written in the language of waves, winds, and wheat, a living system as elusive and enduring as the civilization that created it. Among the vivid frescoes of Knossos, one figure stands apart, the so-called Prince of the Lilies, a youthful male whose reconstructed image has sparked debates for over a century. Crowned with a dramatic headdress of blooming lilies, his bare chest adorned with jewelry, he strides forward with an almost theatrical grace, his outstretched arm holding what might be a scepter or ceremonial staff. But who is he? The answer depends on who you ask. To Sir Arthur Evans, the archaeologist who first uncovered the fragments, this was a priest-king, a divine ruler embodying both political and spiritual authority. Others see a high priest performing a ritual, the lilies symbolizing purity or a connection to nature's cycles. And then there are those who argue he's not human at all, but a god, perhaps a youthful deity of vegetation or the underworld, his floral crown a marker of divinity. The controversy begins with the fresco itself. Unlike the bull-leaping scenes or dolphin frescoes, which were found relatively intact, the prince is a modern reconstruction. Evans' team pieced together fragments, filling in gaps with educated guesses. Some critics argue the restoration is too speculative, that the original fragments might have depicted separate figures miscombined into one. The lilies, for instance, could have been part of a background motif rather than a crown. Even the prince's gender isn't certain. The androgynous features and lack of clear facial hair leave room for interpretation. Could this actually be a goddess or priestess? The Minoans' fluid depictions of gender in art make it a tantalizing possibility. Then there's the symbolism. Lilies appear frequently in Minoan art, often associated with sacred spaces and rituals. A fresco from Amnisos shows lilies growing from a rocky landscape, their stems towering like sacred pillars. Were they emblems of a particular deity, or did they represent rebirth, their seasonal blooming echoing the cycle of life and death? The prince's pose adds another layer, his forward motion and raised arm mirror gestures seen in Egyptian art, where they denote offerings to the gods. If he's making an offering, what's in his other hand? The reconstructed staff could just as easily be a bundle of grain or a sacred snake. The mystery deepens when you consider where the fresco was found, or rather, where it wasn't. Unlike most Knossos paintings which adorned palace walls or ceremonial spaces, the prince's fragments were discovered in a corridor near the palace's entrance. Was this a processional figure greeting visitors as they entered, or did it once belong to a larger, now lost narrative scene? The lack of context makes it feel like a single page torn from a book, the rest of the story lost to time. What makes this figure so compelling is how he defies categorization. He's too elegant to be a warrior, too regal to be a mere priest, yet not quite divine enough to match the unambiguous goddess figures elsewhere in Minoan art. Perhaps that's the point. In a culture that blurred boundaries between the human and the sacred, between nature and authority, the Prince of the Lilies might embody all these roles at once, a reminder that identity, like the fresco itself, is often a mosaic waiting to be seen from just the right angle. At the heart of Nosos lies an open-air space that defies easy categorization. A broad courtyard flanked by tiered steps rising like shallow stairs, their purpose as enigmatic as the frescoes lining the palace walls. Modern archaeologists call it the theatral area, but this label barely scratches the surface of its mysteries. Unlike the grand stone theaters of classical Greece, this structure feels intimate, its steps too low for clear sightlines, its space too confined for large crowds. So what really happened here? The absence of written records leaves us with tantalizing possibilities, each more intriguing than the last. Picture the scene as the sun dips below the Cretan hills, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Torches flicker along the steps as figures draped in flowing robes descend, their movements synchronized to the pulse of lyres and frame drums. Some scholars argue this was a dancing ground, not for casual entertainment, but for sacred performances where every step carried spiritual weight. The Minoans' love of movement is well documented. Frescoes at Knossos and elsewhere show dancers with arms interlaced, their bodies forming living chains. Could these steps have been a stage for rituals reenacting myths, where swirling dances mimicked the labyrinth's twists or the sea's endless rhythms? The raised platform at one end might have held priests or honored guests, turning the space into a theater of divine communion. Yet the structure's design raises questions. The steps are unusually shallow, just 12 inches high, making them impractical for spectators but perfect for seated participants. This detail hints at ceremonies where the boundary between performer and audience blurred, a collective experience rather than passive observation. Nearby, a curious feature called the tripartite shrine overlooks the courtyard, its three-part design echoing later Greek stage buildings. Was this a backdrop for ritual dramas where actors embodied gods and heroes? The Minoan fascination with transformation evident in bull leaping and shape-shifting deities suggests theatricality was woven into their worship. Then there's the communal angle. Unlike the palaces of Egypt or Mesopotamia, which segregated rulers from the populace, Knossos feels permeable, its courtyards inviting inclusion. The theatral area might have hosted civic gatherings, announcements, disputes, or even elections, with the steps serving as egalitarian seating. Linear tablets found nearby list rations for large groups, implying organized events requiring space and coordination. Could this have been Crete's earliest agora, where politics and pageantry intertwined? The most haunting possibility is that the courtyard served all these purposes at once. In a culture that saw no divide between sacred and secular, between art and ritual, why choose just one function? The steps may have echoed with dances at dawn, solemn processions at noon, and storytelling at dusk, each layer of meaning accumulating like the patina on the stones themselves. Today, as visitors sit on those same steps, they become part of an unbroken chain of gathering, their presence a silent tribute to a people who understood that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only experienced. The bones buried beneath Crete soil tell a story. The frescoes count a story of meals shared, harvests celebrated, and flavors traded across the Mediterranean. Analysis of Minoan skeletons reveals a diet as layered as their civilization itself, with teeth worn down by coarse grains but bones strengthened by protein-rich seafood. Shell middens near coastal towns overflow with the remnants of feasts, mussels, sea urchins, and tuna, while clay storage jars at Nosos still bear the faint imprints of olive pits and barley grains. This wasn't mere sustenance, it was a culinary tapestry woven from land and sea, reflecting a society deeply attuned to nature's rhythms and the possibilities of trade. But the real surprise lies in the unexpected luxuries. Residue from ceramic cups hints at imported spices like coriander and saffron, while the bones of fallow deer, an animal not native to Crete, suggest elite hunting parties or gifts from distant allies. At the Palace of Zakros, archaeologists uncovered a kitchen complex with grinding stones still dusted with traces of herbs, and hearths designed to roast meat evenly. The Minoans didn't just eat, they curated flavors, blending local staples with exotic imports in ways that mirrored their cosmopolitan worldview. A single cooking pot from Faistos contained remnants of a stew made with lentils, honey, and a dash of something tart, possibly tamarind, a fruit native to Africa or Asia. How did it reach Crete? The answer lies in their trade networks, where jars of olive oil might sail east only to return filled with spices or dried fruit. Yet for all these discoveries, the silence is deafening. No recipes survive, no clay tablets listing ingredients or methods. We know they baked bread in dome-shaped ovens, pressed grapes into wine so prized it was exported to Egypt, and stored olives in vast pithoi jars. But how did they season their fish? What herbs graced their tables? The absence feels like a missed invitation, a banquet where we can smell the aromas but never taste the dishes. Perhaps the greatest clue to their cuisine isn't in the food itself, but in the way they celebrated it. Frescoes at Akrotiri show women gathering saffron from crocus flowers, while banquet scenes depict guests reclining with cups in hand, their laughter frozen in time. The Minoans didn't just fuel their bodies, they turned meals into rituals where the act of sharing food was as sacred as the flavors themselves. In this way, their diet becomes another kind of fresco, a vibrant, fragmentary glimpse of a people who savored the world as much as they shaped it. Rising from the ruins of Minoan Crete like ghostly echoes of some ancient ritual, the horns of consecration stand as one of the civilization's most recognizable yet enigmatic symbols. These stylized bull horns, carved from stone or molded in plaster, crown altars and rooftops across archaeological sites, their curved silhouettes cutting against the sky with silent authority. Unlike the fluid naturalism of Minoan frescoes, these horns are abstract geometric renditions of power rather than literal representations. But why did this motif dominate sacred spaces from Nosos to mountain peak sanctuaries? The answer may lie at the intersection of nature, divinity, and a civilization's deepest fears and aspirations. Consider their placement. At the Palace of Knossos, pairs of these horns flanked entrances to shrines and marked the corners of courtyards, as if guarding thresholds between the human and divine. On the summit of Mount Juctas, they stood exposed to wind and weather, their bases littered with votive offerings, tiny clay limbs, and animal figurines. This strategic positioning suggests they weren't merely decorative but functioned as spiritual lightning rods, channeling sacred energy. Some scholars argue they served as symbolic altars, their upward curving shape mimicking the gesture of hands raised in prayer or the crescent moon's arc. Others see them as territorial markers, claiming space for the divine in a world where the boundaries between earthly and celestial were porous. Then there's the bull connection, the animal that obsessed Minoan culture. The horn's form distills the bull's essence into pure geometry, removing the body but preserving its most potent attribute. In later Greek myth, bulls were linked to Poseidon, the earth-shaking god who demanded their sacrifice. Could the Minoans have worshipped a similar deity, where the horns became a shorthand for divine power? Frescoes from Akrotiri show horns adorned with colorful patterns and even flowers, hinting they were seen as living entities requiring adornment and care. Yet the horn's simplicity masks profound versatility. At Phaistos, miniature terracotta horns were found in household shrines, suggesting everyday people incorporated them into domestic worship. At Gurnia, they appear alongside double axes, another potent Minoan symbol implying a network of interconnected sacred emblems. Their very ubiquity makes pinning down a single meaning impossible. Were they protective talismans warding off evil, anchors tethering rituals to the divine, or perhaps celestial symbols, their twin peaks mirroring mountain ranges or the horns of the crescent moon? The most compelling theory views them as multidimensional. Like the cross in Christianity or the ankh in Egyptian art, their power lay in their ability to mean many things simultaneously. A farmer might see fertility and abundant harvests in their curves. A sailor might recognize the waves that carried his ship. A priestess might feel the presence of the divine in their shadow. This fluidity reflects the Minoans' genius for embedding layers of meaning into simple forms, a visual language where every line whispered secrets to those who knew how to listen. What lingers today is the uncanny presence of these silent sentinels. Unlike other ancient symbols that faded into obscurity, the horns feel startlingly modern in their abstraction, as if the Minoans carved them not just for their own time but for ours. To stand beneath them is to feel the weight of their mystery, not as a riddle to be solved, but as an invitation to stand at the edge of understanding and glimpse, just for a moment, the world through Minoan eyes. The Minoans may have vanished from history's stage over 3,000 years ago, but their legacy lingers like the scent of saffron in a Cretan breeze, subtle, pervasive, impossible to ignore. Their influence rippled across the ancient world, shaping everything from Greek mythology to the very foundations of Mediterranean trade. Consider the Minotaur's Labyrinth, a story so enduring it became a metaphor for life's twists and turns. Later Greeks like Thucydides spoke of King Minos as if he were both legend and historical figure, a ruler who commanded the seas and inspired awe, but the Minoans' reach extended far beyond myth. Their maritime networks laid the blueprint for the Phoenicians, their art motifs seeped into Mycenaean pottery, and their architectural innovations like light wells and multi-story complexes echoed in the palaces of later Bronze Age rulers. Yet their most profound impact might be invisible at first glance. The Minoans were among the first to master the alchemy of cultural exchange, turning trade into something more than commerce. A Mycenaean noble burying a Minoan-style dagger in his grave wasn't just acquiring a weapon, he was claiming a piece of the mystique that came with it. The double-axe symbol, once sacred to Minoan rituals, resurfaced in Anatolian and Cypriot art, stripped of its original meaning but still pulsing with borrowed power. Even the concept of a centralized palace economy with its intricate record-keeping foreshadowed the bureaucratic systems of classical empires. Modern archaeology keeps uncovering unexpected connections. The vibrant frescoes of Akrotiri on Santorini, frozen by volcanic ash, reveal a shared artistic language across the Aegean. A single Minoan seal found in the Levant hints at diplomatic ties stretching farther than anyone imagined. But the greatest mystery lies in what didn't survive. Linear A's undeciphered script taunts us with unreadable poetry, lost laws, or perhaps mundane grocery lists that would humanize these figures looming so large in our imagination. What makes the Minoans truly timeless is their duality. They feel at once familiar and alien. Their love of nature's beauty resonates with modern sensibilities, yet their willingness to dance with bulls or channel serpents defies easy understanding. They challenge us to see antiquity not as a static tableau but as a living, evolving conversation. Every time a scholar reinterprets a fresco or a diver finds a shipwreck laden with Minoan goods, the story rewrites itself, reminding us that history isn't just about answers. It's about learning to ask better questions. The Minoan Civilization, with its labyrinthine mysteries, reminds us that history is never fully written. Each discovery at Nosos peels back another layer, revealing glimpses of a world both alien and eerily familiar. From the Minotaur's legend to the silent language of Linear A, these 25 enigmas invite us to keep questioning, exploring, and imagining. What other secrets lie beneath Crete's soil? The journey to uncover them is far from over. Think about the Phaistos Disc, still whispering its untranslated message across millennia, or the snake goddess Figurines, their serpents coiled in perpetual defiance of time. These aren't just artifacts, they're fragments of a conversation we're still learning to join. Every broken fresco, every sunken storage jar, holds the potential to rewrite what we thought we knew. The Minoans challenge us to see history not as a static record, but as a living puzzle where even the smallest piece, a charred grain of barley, a child's clay toy, can shift the entire picture. And the questions only multiply. Did the bull leapers of Knossos vault for sport or salvation? Were the peak sanctuaries observatories, altars, or something in between? The more we uncover, the more the Minoans slip through our fingers, refusing to fit neatly into modern categories. Their world was one of fluid boundaries between human and divine, myth and reality, the palace and the sea. Perhaps that's their greatest lesson, that understanding the past requires embracing its contradictions. The allure of Minoan Crete lies in this very elusiveness. Unlike the pyramids or the Parthenon, whose stories have been told and retold, Knossos keeps its secrets close. Even the palace's reconstruction by Sir Arthur Evans, once hailed as a triumph, now sparks debates about how much was restored and how much imagined. The Minoans remind us that archaeology isn't just about finding answers, it's about learning to sit with the unknown. So let these mysteries linger. Let them pull you back to the winding corridors of Knossos, to the silent sanctuaries atop Cretan peaks, to the shores where Minoan ships once vanished into the horizon. The next chapter of their story is still being written not just by scholars with trowels and brushes, but by anyone willing to look closer and wonder. If this journey through their world has sparked your curiosity, share your favorite enigma in the comments below. And for more deep dives into history's unsolved puzzles, don't forget to subscribe. The labyrinth of the past awaits, and every turn reveals something